Welcome back to the S&T podcast. First game on the slate for the weekend is the NFL playoffs. Number one seed in the AFC Broncos versus the Bills. Bills coming off a good, solid win against the Jaguars. Jaguars played solid. Bills played just a little bit better, got the win. Josh Allen, been there before, done that. Going up against Bo Nix this year and Sean Payton. Before the call, Saison mentioned they met last year in the playoffs. So going to be a good rematch. I think this year the Broncos are going to be a better team than they were last year. And the Bills, this arguably might be Josh Allen's worst receiving core in his entire career. So going to be an interesting one with the Bills offense led by Josh Allen and James Cook versus the Broncos defense, who carried the Broncos to the number one seed this year. It definitely wasn't their offense. So without further ado, I'll let Saison take it over and let's hear what he's got to say.
Good stuff there, Tom. Yes, thank you, Rich, for introducing us to this game right here. We have the divisional round between the Denver Broncos and the Buffalo Bills. So, as you talked about, these two teams met in the playoffs last season. The Broncos were the 7th seed last year, I believe. They had barely got in the playoffs. They were like 9-8 and barely just made the cut. And they went on the road to Buffalo. They actually gave them a pretty tough game in the first half. The first half was really good. I remember it was a close game in the first half. Um, Low scoring game. I want to say it was like 10-3 or something like that. But then in the second half, Josh Allen kind of took over, and the Bills did what the Bills do. So, the Broncos are trying to get a little bit of revenge right there in that sense. And also, I think it's kind of interesting because the Broncos, as we know, have been on the right track ever since drafting Bo Nix and hiring Sean Payton, as you alluded to. Has been a great combination for them. Has brought the Broncos back into the championship contender conversation. I don't want to take any light away from Indiana because Indiana is a story all by themselves, right? So I'm not saying that what the Broncos are doing is the same thing as what Indiana's doing because it's not the same thing, but I just see some similarities in the last couple seasons. So, for example, Indiana was always a bad football team, for the last however many years up until a couple years ago, where last year or the season before this season, we saw Indiana go to the playoff, but they got booted in the first round, and no one really believed in them. Even though they were pretty good, we knew at the time they were not real contenders. We just like, oh well, no, this is a cool story. Indiana won a few games. That's cute. And then now, this season, the next season, we see that Indiana is now the best football team in America when it comes to the college ranks. So I kind of see similarities in what the Broncos are doing because the Broncos, like I said, made the playoffs last season, but they barely made it in. No one really believed in them last year, and they went to Buffalo. They kind of gave them a run for their money a little bit, but they came up short, and that was it. No one really thought they were going to be a contender. Well, now this season the Broncos are the number one seed. So it's like it's kind of like those building blocks. Like you have one good year, but it's like a starter year. You're like, okay, this is a good foundation, but we're not quite there yet. And then the next season, that's when it really takes over. So I see some similarities there in what the Broncos are doing. Building off of what they started last season. Now they're one of the best teams in football in general. They've had a great regular season. They were not running through teams. I mean, they definitely earned a lot of those wins. A lot of one-score games this season that the Broncos won. A lot of walk-off field goal type games that they won. But consistency is consistency. If you can consistently win games like that, that means that you're doing something right. So, shout out to them for turning it around. Sean Payton has obviously been a great addition to Denver ever since they. Well, I mean, he was there, but before Bo Nix, they had Russell Wilson. But once they figured out the quarterback, got rid of Russell Wilson, and then got an actual quarterback that he could work with. Now it's been a pretty good hire for them. So, it's good to see Denver back in the playoffs. I think football is better in general when teams like the Broncos are in the playoffs. The historic teams, that we've seen be in these in these conversations. Going back, all the way to the John Elway days. Back in the the '70s and the '80s and all that. The Broncos have always been one of those perennial contenders. So this should be a really good one. This time, of course, Denver will be hosting, so Denver is going to have a chance to avenge that loss they had to Buffalo last year. And you know, like you said, the Buffalo game, they beat the Jaguars last week. It was a really good game. It was back and forth almost the entire game. Very entertaining. The Jaguars did not want to quit, and neither did the Bills, and the Bills ended up just basically being the last one to score. So they escaped, but I don't think this Buffalo team is as good as the teams we've seen in the past. And not saying that they can't, get to the promised land because, that's always the goal for them. And, like I said last week, anything but the Super Bowl for the Bills is a bust, is a disappointment. So, not saying they can't do it. They definitely have the tools to do it. But I just don't think this team is as good as some of the previous Buffalo teams I've seen. And, you know, will it be enough to stand the test, be able to win these important games at the end of the year that are going to be the hardest games you're going to play all year, in the stiffest competition and the biggest stage. So give me the Broncos. Give me the Broncos. I just think that the Broncos have proved this season that they can win those close games, those tough games that you have to pull out. And Buffalo, they've kind of wavered in those games this season. They've been a little up and down, a little inconsistent, and I'm going to pick the more consistent team in this one. So, given the Broncos at home, I think it'll be a real good one, but I think Buffalo is going to come up short.
Yeah, I like how you brought up Russell Wilson too, because just a little side note where Sean Payton kind of had some nasty comments about Russell Wilson. And everybody was like, "Oh, maybe you're just a bad coach. Oh, this, that, the other." It's like, no, no. And then it's like they get rid of Russell Wilson, and they get Bo Nix, and it's and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden they're the one seed in the AFC. It's like now it's like everybody's kind of like, yeah, just never mind, never mind about that. Sean Payton was probably right, I guess,
yeah,
which is funny because Russell Wilson wasn't the starting quarterback this year.
no, he was not. So yeah, definitely was not the coach.
Yeah, so yeah, it's good to see the Broncos back. I've enjoyed this playoff year because it feels like there's new teams. Like, and I know that you could say, well, the Bills make the playoffs all the time. Well, I mean, the Bills might beat the Broncos. This game to me is like it's gonna, I've said this in multiple episodes, but Bills versus Broncos is genuinely coming down to like the core of football. What is more important? Is a good defense more important, or is a good offense more important? Because you could argue Josh Allen might be one of the best. Well, not you. Well, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he has an argument where he might be the best quarterback in the league, just based on what he has to deal with. Conditions that he plays in. So it's like, if you're playing in, like, let's say Miami or California, or you're playing in a dome and you're a quarterback, like, obviously, you can throw the ball as many times as you want every game. It doesn't matter. There's no difference in weather. It's not cold. When you're in Buffalo, nah, there's games where there's 4 inches of snow on the ground and it's currently snowing still, and so you have to run the ball more. Well, Josh Allen can also run the ball. He's a good dual quarterback threat, but just my whole point is this game is going to be Buffalo's offense versus Denver's defense. I think because at the same time, I think Denver's offense is on the same level as Buffalo's defense. So, in my opinion, I think what it's really going to come down to. Gosh, sorry, excuse me, is it's going to be, can Buffalo score on Denver's defense? Because we know that Denver, they're probably not going to score a whole lot of points. They're still going to score some, though. They're a good offense. They have a good system. They have a quarterback that everybody's bought into the culture on offense and defense for Denver. So the offense understands it's like, hey, If we score 21 points, we're most likely going to win the game. But the thing is, for the Broncos offense, it's getting 21 points. And that's the challenge. Where if you're Buffalo, you could also argue the same point. It's like, well, if our defense comes up and comes to play and shows up and we score 21 points, Buffalo probably feels like they can win the game. So it's just, to me, I think it's going to be a race, like who can get to 21 first and then kind of just try and shut down the game. So that's my opinion on the game. Honestly, I have no idea who's going to win because, like I said, it really just comes down to, will Denver's defense come to play like they normally have? If they do and they can shut down Buffalo's offense, then I mean their offense is good enough of just, they have a system, they everybody's bought in, everybody knows their role, everybody knows what to do. They will score points. They will score, like my guess, it might be 5 field goals. They might score 15 points. But if their defense comes to play like they have done all year and they have home field advantage, the weather is not really going to matter. The only thing that'll really matter is the elevation. Where if you play in Denver, it's a different ball game because you get more tired easily. Denver is what, 11,000 feet in the air, like it's the mile high city. So to me, it's not going to be the weather. It might be the elevation that hurts Buffalo, because Buffalo's pretty close to sea level. They're not some, they're not even half a mile up. So to me, that's going to be the main factor, is playing in Denver. The cold isn't going to bother them, but they might get gassed out. And if Buffalo's defense gets gassed out, Broncos maybe break it open in the second half. And so give me the Broncos as well. But if Buffalo prepares correctly, if they go out, like they should probably already be in Denver right now, if you're asking me. Like they need to get acclimated to the elevation, and just strictly, I mean, really just for the defense. Like the offense, I think they'll be fine either way, because what Denver has done all year as well is they try and really control the clock. They don't do anything super flashy. They've had big plays, don't get me wrong, but that's what Denver's going to try and do this game. Denver's going to try and wear out the defense in the first half and then just lean on them, lean on them, lean on them. And then the second half, if Buffalo gets tired on defense, it might break open, because I don't know, because the Denver's defense is definitely gonna probably show up. Like I've been wrong before, but I think Denver's defense is gonna show up and stop Buffalo multiple times. So it's gonna basically come down to it. I mean, can Buffalo make big plays? They don't really have a big play guy other than Josh Allen. James Cook is a really good running back, don't get me wrong, but he's not really he's not gonna break one for 80. And now that I say that, he's probably gonna break one for 80. But long story short, I think the Broncos win this game. And yeah, anything else you have to add on that, Cezanne?